The Mishnah on Daf Ayin Dalid is the Mishnah of Shomeres Yavam. And the question is whether or not the Yavam could be Mefer, the Nedarim of the Yavama, before he is Bala and he's Makayim, the mitzvah of Yibum. She's now in a state of Shomeres Yavam. And there's an issue here whether Yesh Zika or Ein Zika. Do we consider that the Zikas Yibum is tantamount to Ishus, just like in Arusa? And in the case of Arusa, we know that the Orus could be Mefer HaNedarim. And what would be the status of Zika? Now, Beis Hillel are of the opinion that on a Doraisa level, a Yavama is not Knuya to the Yavam until there's beer. But the Shammai hold that there's something called Maimar. And this is Doraisa apparently. And the Torah recognizes Kesef or Shtar like any marriage Isha B'Alma. Shomeres Yavam, the Mishnah says, and now we have three opinions in the Mishnah. The first opinion says that Bein liyavam echad, bein l'shnei yavamim Rabbi Lezer Omer Yafet. She falls for Yibam to two brothers. That means Reuven dies, and Leah falls for Yibam to Shimon and Levi. Rabbi Eliezer is of the opinion that despite the fact that there are two different Yavamim here, there's both Shimon and Levi, two Achim, one of them can be Mefer HaNedarim without the other one, and the Gemara is going to explain which one of them will be Mefer and why he's allowed to be Mefer. Now we get to the middle Shita. Rabbi Yeshua Omer Li Echad. If there's only one Yavam, only one brother survives Reuven and Shimon, then he will be Mefer. Avalos l'shnayim. But if there are two brothers, that's Shimon and Levi, neither of them can be Mefer. Rabbi Akiva now goes to the other extreme. Lo li'echad v'lo l'shnayim. Even if there's only one brother that survives Reuven, namely Shimon, he cannot be Mefer HaNedarim. How much more so if there are two brothers? Amar Rabbi Eliezer, Ma im Isha Shekana Hu Liatzmo. In the case of Erison, when he, the Oris, took the initiative with a Maisa Kiddushin Areu Mefer Nedarim, he is Mefer HaNedarim, of course, together with the father. Is Isha Shehikmilam and Shamayim Eino Din Kolshkein Sheyafer Nedarim. In other words, the kinyan that HaKadosh Baruch Hu up in Shamayim is Makne Yavam to the Yavam is even greater than the kinyan that a person takes on his own when he's Makadish and Isha. Amal Rabbi Akiva says, no, that's not a valid Kal V'chomer. Im Amarta B'Isha Shekana Hu Atzmo. He could be Mefer HaNedarim since he was Konahar by himself. And why? Because Ein Lacherim Rishus Ba, meaning no other Baal can come along other than her own Baal and take her away from the Baal. That's how strong the Ishus is. Tomer B'Isha Shiknilam and Shamayim Sheish Acherim Ba Rishus. There are other brothers besides this Shimon. There's a Levi and etc. And they could decide to be Konahar and bump off Shimon. So Shimon's Zika is not really a Zika because Zika and Ishus means that no one else can take her away. Okay, you're right. If there's Shimon and Levi, two brothers that survived Reuven, Micha, then you're right. One of them could grab another one, her from the other one, and decide, Kol HaKodim Zacha as a Rishut. But what are you going to tell me about the case where she fell to one Yavam? There's only one brother, Shimon. Amallah, Rabbi Akiva responds to Rabbi Yeshua, even if there's only one Yavam, he cannot be Mefer. Why? She'ena Yavama Gemura Yavam, because the ishus between a Yavama and a Yavam is not a full-fledged ishus, Kishem Sharusa Gemura Isha. So the Gemara is going to explain why Rabbi Akiva came to the conclusion that the Zika, the ishus between the Baal and the Yavam, even though there's only one Yavam, between the Yavam and the Yavama, there's only one Yavam, is not as powerful as Erusin. So basically, when Rabbi Akiva slugged up the Kal Vachomer of Rabbi Eliezer, that was only to prove to Rabbi Eliezer that certainly in the case where there are two Yavamim, there's Shimon and Levi, certainly you cannot claim that that's a relationship of ishus that will allow for a person to Nedarim on the part of either Shimon or Levi. But in truth, Rabbi Akiva holds that in general, Zikas Yibum is not enough to generate a Schus HaFaras Nedarim. And now we'll start the Gemara. Bishleim Rabbi Akiva Savar Ein Zika. We understand that Rabbi Akiva holds that the Yavam cannot be made for Nedarim because Zikas Yibum is not the same powerful ishus as Erusin, and the Yavam is not does not have a din of ishus with regard to his Yavam. For Rabbi Yeshua, I can understand Rabbi Yeshua as well, because if there's only one Yavam, then he can be Meifir because Savar Yesh Zika. He holds that there's Zika, with the exception of the case where there are two Yavamim. Okay, here we have a very important note in the Masechet. Explaining Rabbi Yeshua. Alima Zika Yoser Me'erusin. According to Rabbi Yeshua, Yesh Zika is even more profound of an ishus than Erusin, because in the case of Erusin, you need Knisa L'chuppah, which is not required in the case of Yavam. Now, the Ran points out that the Gemara now is of the opinion that the Yavam could be made for the Nedarim without the shutness of the father. That's what the Ran says. We'll soon see that the Ran is going to offer another interpretation. He says, if she dies and she was and she's now Zakukal Yavam to a Yavam who's a Kohen, or if she dies, what's the relationship to the Yavam in terms of Yerusha? Is in that context, the Zikas Yibum is certainly less than Erusin. And Ela El Gabi Hadinim Hamurim, that only applies to those dinim like Litamila and Yerushasa, where it says She'ero. So an Arusa is considered more She'er Basar than a Yavama. But as far as Nedarim is concerned, Zikas Yibum is even greater than Erusin, because there's no requirement of She'er Basar. Then the Ran offers a second interpretation that even according to Rabbi Yeshua, Zika is not the same, is not as powerful as Erusin. And the reason why the Yavam is allowed to be made for the Nedarim is only because he's a shutaf with the father. And there's enough of an ishus to equal that of an Arusa so that both the Arus and the Av together as a joint effort could be made for a Nedarim. Now, Tosfos is of the opinion that the entire enterprise of Yesh Zika is only D'Rabbanan. On a total level, a Yavama is not considered as if she has Ishus. She just has a Zika that prohibits her from getting married to anyone else. And not only that, the Gemara says in Yavama Staf Yud Zayin Amud Beis that the relationship between the Yavam and her Krovos is an Isser of Zikas Yibum Durabanan. So how could it be, therefore, asks Tosfos, that Zika would be enough to allow Fafaris Nedarim, which is Doraisa? And the Rishonim come to the conclusion that the Zika, Yesh Zika in our Gemara, is not connected to the general machlokas about Zika in Masechet Yavamis, because that Sugya in Yavamis is talking about Zika on a Darabanan level. We're talking about Zika on a Daraisa level to allow for Afaris Nedarim. So again, we have managed to understand both Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yeshua, but Elo, Rabbi Eliezer, he's like my timer. It doesn't seem to make any sense, because Eyesh Zika, so now she's kuka to both Shimon and Levi. And Ein Brera, we don't know which one is going to actually implement the Zika. We cannot predict that she's going to be Ishto Shel Shimon or Ishto Shel Levi. And together as a joint effort, Shimon and Levi could not be made for Nedarim, because it says Isha Yithirenu, and that means B'Lashon Yachid, and we darshan that at the time of the Hafara, it's going to have to be clear who is Isha. He and only he can be made for Nedarim. So how does Rabbi Eliezer allow for both Yevamim, whether it's Shimon or Levi, to be made for the Nedarim? Amar Rabbi Ami. Rabbi Eliezer is not talking about a case where a woman falls for Yibam to Shimon and Levi, two brothers, but rather Kigon Sha'asab Maimer, one of the two brothers gave Kesef or Shtar to the Yavama, and Rabbi Eliezer Savala Kibet Shami the Amri Maimer Koda B'Yavimto Kinyan Gomel. The Shita Beit Shammai is that even though the Torah requires the Yavam to marry the Yavama, so to speak, with Yibum, with Bia, but nevertheless, the Torah also recognizes Kesef and Shtar as a valid way of creating issues. Now, where is the source in the Torah, according to Beit Shammai, for the kinyan of Maimon? And the Gemara establishes in Yevamos Daf Chav Tes, it says in the pasuk L'chol lo leisha, and it's mashma that l'chol davar hi keisha. However, we have to point out that Beis Hillel disagree with Beit Shammai. They hold that Maimer is only d'Rabbanan to passel her on the Shar Achim, but she doesn't become like Ishto, and certainly not on a Doraisa level. And the nafkamina is going to be whether Chalitza is going to be a requirement. According to Beit Shammai, we could waive the requirement of Chalitza because now there's Ishus Doraisa based on Kesef and Shtar. All she would need is a get. But Beis Hillel would require not only a get, but also Chalitza. A get midrabanan because Maimer is the Rabbanon. But on a Deraisa level, she still is a Yevama, and therefore she needs Chalitza. So if Rabbi Eliezer has accepted Beit Shammai's Shita that Maimar is Kona Kinyan Gomer, based on the law of the Torah, she's Ishto Gilchal Davar, therefore that brother, whether it's Shimon or Levi, who gave her Maimar, Kesef Ashtar, he could be made for 100 Dar. Rabbi Yeshua Omer Loch. What would Rabbi Yeshua respond? Hani Mili. When do we apply the principle of Maimar and Yesh Zika? That's only Bechad Yavam. If there's only one Yavam, Rabbi Yeshua says, I embrace the Shita of Zika of Rabbi Eliezer together with what? Together with Maimar. Is Yachalula Hafer Lo Mikoch Zika? Perhaps even Zika alone would be enough. Or perhaps you need Zika and Maimar. And the Ran seems to say that Rabbi Yeshua is based on Beis Shammai, who holds that there is Maimar. So it's not just Yesh Zika, but it's Zika plus Maimar. But Bishnei Yevamim, but if she falls for Yibam to two, to Shimon and Levi, low, then Maimar will not be enough to allow that particular brother who performed Maimar to be Mefer Nedarim. Why? Because Mika Midi Chi Asi Achoi Asar Le Bebia Obegitu Mefer. What's the logic of Rabbi Yoshua? In a case where there are two Yevamim, there's Shimon and Levi, she's still in the Rishus of Levi, meaning, again, even after Shimon does Maimar, she's still in the Rishus of Levi. Why? Because Levi could aser her on Shimon in one of two ways. Either Levi performs Yibum, and he goes ahead and he's Baaleh, or he can give her a get. In both of those scenarios, she could not be married to Shimon, even though Shimon did a Maimah. And therefore, says Rabbi Yeshua, in a case with the Shimon and Levi to Achim, Shimon cannot be made for an Nedarim. He doesn't have exclusive rights like an Orus. An Orus could be made for Nedarim, no one else could take her away from him. But in the case of Shnei Achim, Yevamim, even if one of the Achim does a Yibum, performs Maimar, the other Ach could still grab, Bikodim Zacha, either through to Aser her al Shimon, either through Yibum itself or through Get. And therefore Shimon could not be made for a Nedarim. Rabbi Akiva sovereign Zika. Rabbi Akiva rejects the halach of Zika. It means that whatever Zika is, it's only a negative. It only prohibits her from marrying anyone else. She's Yivam L'Shuk. It generates Isurim. But there's no positive issues. Now, Rabbi Lazar in Masechta Yevamis on Daf Chav Tes, okay, this is the Amora, Rabbi Lazar, not the Tana Rabbi Eliezer. He's of the opinion that even according to Beit Shammai, that Maimer is kona b'yivimto ben Torah, but it's not a kinyan gomur. Even according to Beit Shammai, she does not become ishto l'chol dava. And according to Rabbi Lazar's interpretation of Beit Shammai, not the one that we presented until now, even Beit Shammai would require not only get, but also chalitza. And the halach of Maimar, what does Maimar achieve, according to Rabbi Lazar's interpretation of Beit Shammai, is that Achosa, the sister of the Yavama, we'll call her Rachel, becomes an erva of Achos Ishto. And she doesn't need Yibum. Like, for example, let's say there are three brothers, and two of them are married to two sisters. So if the two brothers who are married to two sisters died, and the two sisters now fall for Yibum in front of the third brother, he's not miyabim any one of them. Each one of them is called Achos Ziku Kaso. And Achos Kukaso is Asura Oleh B'Yibum Kachos Isha However, according to Beit Shammai, if after the first brother, the Shlishi, the third brother, does Maimer Be'ishto, and then the Baal of Achos Hashniya dies, then the Shlishi is Mutar B'Rishona, because he did a Maimer. Because through Maimar, Achosa becomes an Erev of Achos Isha, and she doesn't fall for Yibum at all, not for Yibum, not for Chalitza. And therefore the Rishona is not Asur Mishum Achos Kukosa. So the Gemara asks Ula Rabbi Lazar, according to the Shita Rabbi Lazar, Tiyoma Maimar Lebeit Shammai Eino Konen, El Lidchos Bitsara, only in that scenario with 3 brothers and 2 married, 2 sisters, etc., etc., Ma'ikil Neima. How are you going to explain the Tana of our Mishnah Rabbi Eliezer, who says that even if there are 2 Yavamim, the Yavam could be made for Hanedarim? And what are you going to say? He did a Maimar? That's not going to be enough, because even Beit Shammai agrees that Ein Kona, the Maimar is not Kona, to make her into Ishto. It's only Docha the Achoso Miyibum. And the Gemara answers, Hokamai Askinan, when did Rabbi Eliezer say that the Baal, the Yomam, could be made for Hanedarim? Kigon Sha'amad Bidin. One of the brothers was Omed Bidin, Im Yevimto, V'chivu liyabim olachotzlo. So Bezdin issued an order that he has to be miyabim her, or alternatively give a chalitza. Now he flies the coop, and the din is chayav lo b'mizonos. He becomes chayav to support the yavama. Now here the Rosh adds another condition here. When it says Kigon Sha'amad Bidin, he says it's a case where the other brother is not available. Let's say Levi is out there in the 7 seas, and only Shimon could be miyabim. So they paskin that Shimon has to be miyabim, or alternatively give a chalitza. So even without Maimer, the psak din itself generates a chiyuv mizonos. And therefore, since it's a chiyuv mizonos, ukir Rabbi Pinchas mishmei derav, and now we again invoke the principle that we had earlier of Rabbi Pinchas, namely, kol anoderes al das bailin anoderes, the moment that he's chayav mizonos, hanedarim are taken al das, that the Baal will agree, and if he doesn't agree, it could be made for hanedarim. And in this case of Yavama, when Bezdin paskins that this Yavam is chayav b'mizonos, because he was the one on whose shoulders Bezdin obligated him in Yibum, and now he flies the coop, he's chayav b'mizonos, then she's no deres al das al daito, and therefore he could be made for her. And this leads us to Daf Ayin Dalid Omid Beit.